June 13th, 2023 meeting of the Sierra Madre City Council to order. Madam Deputy City Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Mayor Edward Garcia,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Creeps. Here. Councilmember Jean Goss,
Here.
Councilmember Christine Lowe,
Present.
and Councilmember Robert Parkhurst.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You have a quorum.
Thank you. I get the honor of leading the Pledge of Allegiance and Inspiration today, so if you're able, please rise and join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So next Wednesday, June 21st, at 7:58 a.m. Pacific time, it is our summer solstice. The summer solstice marks the official beginning of summer. Most of you know this in the northern hemisphere, occurring when the Earth arrives at a point in the orbit when the North Pole is at its maximum tilt, about 23.5 degrees towards the sun, resulting in the longest day and shortest night of the calendar year. When I say longest day, I mean the most hours of daylight. Obviously, the days are the same length. We all know that. So on the day of the June solstice, the northern hemisphere receives sunlight at the most direct angle of the year. So I learned that it's not always on June 21st. I always thought it was, but the next 2 years, the solstice will actually be on June 20th. So in 2024 and 2025, we will have a summer solstice occurring on June 20th in the early morning. This phenomenon has been celebrated by ancient peoples, such as the ancient Greeks, ancient Romans, ancient Chinese, the Vikings, the Native Americans. We know the Maya and the Aztecs have celebrated this by having their buildings reflect the shadow of the sun during the day and when the solstice occurs. And we also know the Druids celebrated as well with things such as Stonehenge. So as we look forward to summer, hasn't really felt much like summer. I know the kids are out of school, but it's been raining and dreary, but we do have those longer days of daylight. I'd like to officially wish everyone a happy summer and encourage folks to take advantage of the longer daylight hours by getting outside and enjoying the great outdoors. That concludes my inspiration. Okay. Moving on to the agenda. Actually, we had a closed session, so I'd like to have a motion of reporting out from the closed session.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you have a report for us?
Thank you, Mayor. The City Council met in closed session to discuss pending litigation, and no, there is no reportable action.
Right, thank you. And moving on to the agenda, I think there is one item missing from the agenda. And I think we just covered it, right? So I'd like to see if there's a motion to amend the agenda to include the closed session.
Move to approve the amended agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have an agenda. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Approval for reading resolutions and ordinances by title only. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. And we do have one set of meeting minutes. The meeting of May 23rd, 2023, our last meeting. Madam Deputy City Clerk, were there any substantive changes submitted to you prior to the meeting?
Councilmember Parkhurst sent an email recommending a non-substantive change, and it was corrected in the minutes.
Thank you. Anything here from the dais? Okay, is there a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of May 23rd, 2023.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
All right. I was there, but it was telephonically. Okay, one abstention and 4 ayes. Thank you. All right, moving right along to mayor and city council reports. Anybody like to start?
I'll go first. No report.
It's easy. Thank you, Councilmember Goss. Please.
Well, last night, I attended the National Women's Political Caucus of Greater Pasadena area, and our own Mayor Pro Tem Kelly Creeves was the guest speaker on politics and community, and it had most amazing leaders from all over our region and our area, and it was fantastic. On Friday, June 9th, one of the highlights so far of my service here was we did a live fire operation with Sierra Madre Fire Department at Rio Hondo Fire Academy, where we got to see live fire burn, and we got to sit there with full turnouts on, and we got white Chiefs hats, each of us. I should have brought mine. And then last, just a quick announcement for the Sierra Madre 4th. Yes, yay, this is the most exciting thing ever. Sierra Madre annual 4th of July home decorating contest is coming up, and the due date to apply for that is June 23rd, and it's online at Sierra Madre 4th of July. 4th of July is spelled out.com. So if you're interested in that, it's pretty exciting.
Thank you, Councilmember Lowe. Councilmember Parkhurst?
Sure. So, back in May 17th and 18th and 19th, I attended the California Community Choice Aggregation Conference, talking about renewable energy. So all of the community choice aggregation organizations come together and learned about some of the challenges and opportunities to renewable energy in California, including around transmission, siting, reliability. And then last week, the Clean Power Alliance celebrated its 5th anniversary. So last Wednesday, we had a celebration of that, and we had many of the current board members, plus some of the older ones or the former ones, including Sheila Kuehl, and so it was a very nice event, and I can't believe it's already been around 5 years. There was also a CPA executive committee meeting, nothing to report out from that. And then on May 20th, I attended the Public Works Open House, as well as the Library Wildlife meeting, or the wildlife meeting at the library, which was really well done. We've got a really good advocate in Mackenzie Rich from the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. She really wants to try to implement some programs that will help. And one of the things that I took away is that her position is currently temporary. So it'd be something that would be really great to help make her permanent, because she's got a lot of great energy and great ideas. And then finally, I attended the Senior Commission last week. They just continue to have an incredible amount of programs going forward. Just celebrated the Older American, as was reported at the last City Council meeting. And that's all I have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Parkhurst. Mayor Pro Tem?
So I participated also in the fire operation. It was really incredible. Learned a lot about myself. Apparently I'm much more claustrophobic than I ever knew. But it really did sort of hammer home the amazing work that our firefighters do in like 40 pounds of equipment. I mean, the physical toll, just on its own is hard enough, but then, adding all of that weight and just standing around in that all day, even just that gave me such an appreciation for the physical strength and endurance that has to be part of that life. And so it just really was meant to be, and successfully so, kind of a small sliver of a view into, what it is that those men and women, take on for our safety. And then I attended the, what do we call it now? Not League of California Cities, the Cal Cities regional meeting, our Los Angeles regional meeting, where all of the LA County officials meet. We talked a little bit about retail theft and some of the measures that are coming forth in the legislature to address that. Not as much of a concern here, although obviously we have had some uptick in commercial theft here, but it's really been a huge problem in large shopping centers in larger cities. And I think that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. So on May 27th, I attended the Mount Wilson Trail Race. Was there early in the morning. Got to hear the ringing of the bell and seeing all the runners take off. And we also saw the youth run, the 2 youth runs, which was very special. I was able to stick around and hand out the medals to the winners from all the categories. There were quite a few, and I was happy to see that there are quite a few Sierra Madre residents, as usual, in the race. On May 30th, I attended a dinner. I was invited by Supervisor Barger, our representative here in the 5th District. We met at the Getty House, which is the home of Mayor Bass, the mayor of LA, and it was an intimate dinner. I was joined by the Vice Mayor of Pasadena, the Vice Mayor of Palmdale, the mayors of La Cañada, Flint Ridge, Burbank, Glendale, and Lancaster, and a few staffers. That was it. So Mayor Bass and Supervisor Barger are very hot on collaboration. Even small cities like us, when they can help, they want to be able to help and reach out, and I believe it was earnest. So it was a great meeting. It's good to build bridges with our regional partners to address regional issues. Mayor Bass did have a stint in Congress, and she still has connections there, and she knows there's a lot of federal money out there, and sometimes it's hard to get into this region. But together we could hopefully get some of our tax dollars back in Sierra Madre and the 5th District. Moving on June 3rd, I was honored to open the British Homes June Fair. It's a great event, annual event. Took my daughter Violet there, and it was really nice. I was invited by former Chief Marilyn Diaz. I believe she's the 2nd Vice President of the board of the British Home. A very, very well-run event. On June 9th, I was at the fire ops as well. I'll tell you, if you saw Councilmember Parker's white helmet, mine does not look like that anymore. I don't think I can even clean it. It was to kind of bounce off what Mayor Pro Tem was saying. It was really eye-opening. I've always admired and respected those that serve in our fire department, but really to experience the heat and the darkness. The darkness was one of the things that you don't know where you're going. You have to hold on to the fire hose to retreat and to get into the fires. It was over 200 degrees where when in one of the situations we were in ambient, that would immediately burn your skin. So I was happy for those turnouts in the SCBA to keep me breathing and going along. So I thank the Rio Hondo Fire Academy and our fire department for hosting that. We learned quite a bit. Also on June 9th, the community services had Puss in Boots in the Park. It was the first movie of the year, so I think it's every other Friday there's going to be a movie in the park. Thanks to community services for hosting that. Thank you to Christ Church for providing popcorn for everybody. It was a great event. And on June 11th, this Sunday was Elvis in the Park. It was raining, but there was still a great turnout. It was nice to see Harry Shahoyan, former Arcadia native, but he worked in Sierra Madre at Restaurant Lozano, where Wisteria is, for I think 10 years prior to becoming Elvis of all ages or whatever. He's great. He has the great jokes, and he sings well, and he was out there in the rain doing his thing. And that concludes my report of city business. I do have a few announcements to make. Tomorrow is June 14th. It's Flag Day. It commemorates the adoption of the flag of the United States that was on June 14th, 1777. Also tomorrow, June 14th at 8:30 a.m., please come join the Sierra Madre Police Department for Coffee with a Cop. This will be at Syndicate, so tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. Also, you can join our fire chief, Chief Bartlett, sitting back there. You can hike with Chief Bartlett up in the mountains. There are 3 dates to choose from. Please go to the city's website on ActiveNet and register. Space is limited to participate. Also, the YMCA is having a summer community swim, which is open swim for residents. Entry is $3, and this will go until August 15th. The times are Monday through Friday from 10:30 a.m. to noon, and Saturday from 11:30 a.m. to 1. Flyers are in the back if you want more details. As I said, the family movie Fridays and summer concerts in the park started this last weekend. You can find the summer schedules in the back of the room as well. And finally, we currently have 2 vacancies in community services, the Community Service Commission. We encourage residents to serve on commissions, and we also have 1 expected vacancy in the Natural Resources Commission. If anyone is interested, please contact our city clerk's office for more information. And that concludes my announcements. Before public comment, I'd like to read the Public Participation Code of Conduct. We've been doing that. It should be on the back of the yellow cards if you are going to make public comment. The first portion of public comment is for items not on the agenda. Your participation is welcome and invited at all city council meetings. The council requests that participants refrain from making personal, slanderous, profane, or disruptive remarks. A person who continues to disrupt the orderly conduct of the meeting after being warned by the mayor or designee to cease the disruption may be precluded from further participation in the meeting. No signs, posters, or other large objects shall be brought in the council chambers or other meeting place if doing so would disrupt, disturb, or otherwise impede the orderly course of the meeting. And with that, I'd like to open the meeting up to public comment for items not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to make your comment, and if you have not already, we have yellow cards in the back. Please bring them to the Deputy City Clerk. And Madam City Clerk, Deputy City Clerk, do we have any cards?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we received 4 cards for items not on the agenda and no emails were received. Our first speaker is D. Alcorn.
D. Alcorn of Grandview, members of the council. I just wanted to report on the Memorial Day ceremony. And it was well put together. Obviously, it's been it's a standard thing every year. It's the VFW Post Lieutenant Kenneth Bell, and they had it was very outstanding. We had pretty good participation. We had a lot of people attended. They had a normal thing honoring the people that have served and died for our country, and it was very well put together. Obviously, the way they've done it, and they had flags on there. People that in the cemetery that have been served in the services. And we had two members from the city here. We had Chief Bartlett was here, and also Chris Camino, the director, was here. And I'm a little disappointed we didn't see anybody here, but I see you do have a busy schedule, but a little disappointed. Also, I'd like to say that that the VFW Post is having their 100th anniversary. They've been here since 1923. And it's going to be this next month, in the next few weeks. And so I want to say congratulations to them for their 100 years of service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alcorn.
Our next speaker is Mary Lou Caldwell.
Mary Lou Caldwell on Grandview, but the low part of Grandview, not the high part of Grandview. I'm here to invite everyone to the Kiwanis Chili Cook-Off, which will be the 1st of July. It will start off the July 4th celebration. It will be at the rec center where the pool is. It's been there for several years. And this is our comeback. We were dark for 3 years. Everybody was dark for 3 years. And there will be line dancing and the chili cook-off. And I happen to have just a few tickets with me. But sales will be online, and I think the information on the online tickets is in the posters that you see around town. Starting time is 6 o'clock on the 1st, and we invite everybody to come and have a wonderful time and start the holiday jumping. And as I say, I have a few tickets and I'll be here for the duration, so if anybody wants a ticket, they can stop me. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Caldwell.
Our next speaker is David Gordon.
Good afternoon, David Gordon, Sierra Madre Playhouse. So I want to tell you about what we're having on at the Playhouse. We had our first weekend of a tribute concert for Dolly Parton called Love Dolly, which was very, very successful. And as a result, tickets for the second and last weekend are going very fast. It's sold out on Sunday afternoon, but there are a few tickets left on Saturday and Friday night. Thanks to that show, we are having a film show of the real Dolly Parton in Steel Magnolias on Wednesday evening. And then next up is a return of Mr. Yunioshi. We had him perform at the beginning of the year. It's a solo performance by an Asian American who plays. If you saw Breakfast at Tiffany, you will remember that there is a Japanese person played not by a Japanese person, but by a well-known Hollywood actor. So Mr. Yunioshi plays this well-known Hollywood actor. We're then having The Turn of the Screw, a two-hander, a horror story, very terrifying. And then for the first time ever, we are starting the Sierra Madre Silent Film Festival. As you all know, the Sierra Madre Playhouse started life as a furniture depository and became a cinema in 1924. So we're bringing back the cinema to the Playhouse. It was called the Wisteria Cinema. So we're having 2 days of incredible silent films introduced by scholars in the field and with a piano accompanist, Frederick Hodges, who's extremely well known internationally as a silent film accompanist. Then we're opening The Right Is Ours, a musical about suffragettes. It's being opened on September the 8th, Friday, September the 8th, and we're honored that Representative Judy Chu is coming as our guest of honor, and members of council have also been invited. I'm hoping that the mayor will say a few remarks. Final show this year, we're bringing back Corey Cable Kidder, who will be doing a USO 1940 style Christmas show. Next year is our 100th anniversary, and I give advance notice that I'm expecting an extremely large gift from the city of Sierra Madre to help in our refurbishment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Our last speaker is Joel Goodwin.
Good evening, Mayor Garcia and members of our city council. You guys know me, Joel Goodwin, 390 West Sierra Madre Boulevard, right up the street. I just want to address the fact that I'm really puzzled why 3 of our ATMs in our city are now gone. We only have one active ATM for our town. One right in front of Chase. 3 of our ATMs are gone. How do you expect everyone in our town to use one ATM? Just really concerns me why these ATMs keep disappearing. Why it keeps happening. Just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin.
There are no other speaker cards.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving along on the agenda. Next is our one presentation. It's a presentation of the library annual bookmark contest winners, and I believe we have librarian Doreen Thomas to present.
All right. Hello, Mayor Garcia, and hello to all of our city council members. My name is Doreen Thomas. I am the Youth Services Librarian at the Sierra Madre Public Library, and I'm here to provide a brief report on our 2023 bookmark contest that happened in March and April of this year. This year's bookmark contest theme was titled Wonders of Reading, and it invited participants to showcase the people, places, and things that depict the discovery and wonder of reading. Our annual bookmark contest is open to children in kindergarten through 8th grade who live in Sierra Madre or go to school in Sierra Madre or have a Sierra Madre public library card. This year we had over 300 participants, 311 to be exact, which is one of the largest number of participants that we've ever had. Our contest judges had the challenging task of reviewing all 311 entries and selected a first and second place winner from each grade level, kindergarten through 8th grade. This means that we had 9 first place winners and 9 second place winners in total. All of our first and second place winners were recognized at an awards ceremony that happened on Wednesday, April 26th during National Library Week. In addition, all of the winning bookmarks are currently on display in the children's room at the library, and I encourage you all to come and stop by and take a look at the display when you get a chance. It's a really lovely display that beautifully highlights the creativity and talent of our youngest community members. Of the 9 first place winners, 4 were selected to be printed, and have them here. And they were selected by Sierra Madre Mayor Edward Garcia, the Friends of the Sierra Madre Library President, Julie Bencosme, Sierra Madre City Manager, Jose Reynoso, the Sierra Madre Library Board of Trustee Chair, Laura Palmer. And tonight, I'm excited to share with you the names of the 4 artists who designed the printed bookmarks. But before I share that information with you, I do want to take a moment to acknowledge our sponsoring organizations who helped make the contest possible by providing both funding and manpower to the contest. These fabulous 5 sponsors, that I like to call them, sponsoring organizations include the Sierra Madre Community Foundation, the Mountain Views News, the Sierra Madre Women's Club, Sierra Madre Kiwanis Club, and the Friends of the Sierra Madre Library. Can we give them a round of applause? Is there a slide? Okay, that's okay. We can go without it. We have the bookmarks in the back. Visual aids. Images of the 4 bookmarks should have been up on the slide behind you, but it's not, so we'll use these. These bookmarks have already been printed, as you can see, and they're currently available at the library. They will continue to be distributed for the next year. And I also brought some for you to take home with you tonight. So they are located on the back table with the agendas, and everyone on City Council should have gotten a little packet with all of them as well. Let's see, where am I here now? Without further ado, let's get to the names of the artists who created these lovely bookmarks. If you are present, when I call your name, could you please come up to the front so we can recognize you and so that we can take a group photo at the end. Okay, so the first one is the one that is bordered in dark blue. It is our mayor's selection, and it was designed by a student who just completed the 1st grade at Gooden School, Joaquin Quiros. up here till the end. Okay. All right. The next bookmark is the one that has the purple border. And this one was selected by the Friends of the Sierra Madre Library president. It was designed by a student who just completed the 5th grade at Alverno Heights Academy, Lauren Jukic, who Lauren couldn't make it to the council meeting tonight. All right, and then the next one is our one that is bordered in green. And this one was selected by the Sierra Madre city manager. It was designed by a student who just completed the 3rd grade at Sierra Madre Elementary, Amanda Spears. And finally, is the bookmark that is bordered in orange. And this one was selected by the Sierra Madre Library Board of Trustee chair. It was designed by a student who just completed the 2nd grade at Sierra Madre Elementary, Dylan Voralik. So I think that the mayor has something special for you all.
So I'd like to congratulate you on getting your bookmarks printed. They are wonderful. I was able to peruse them. I think I got first dibs on my choice. And it was blind. There were no names on it. So this was, it was a blind judging. You guys did very well. You make your community proud. So I do have some certificates of recognition, and I'm gonna go ahead and read out what it says. So you have a certificate of recognition from the City of Sierra Madre in recognition of the Sierra Madre Library Board of Trustees Chair's selection for the 2021, we'll fix that. For the 2023 annual bookmark contest, Sierra Madre Elementary School 2nd grade recipient, Dylan Vorlik. Congratulations. So stay up here, we're gonna take a picture, but let me give you your certificate. You're welcome. Next in line, in recognition for the mayor's selection for the 2023 annual bookmark contest, Gooden School 1st grade recipient, Joaquin Quiros. Congratulations. You were my pick. And finally, in recognition of the city manager's selection for the 2023 annual bookmark contest, Sierra Madre Elementary School 3rd grade recipient, Amanda Spears. Congratulations. Okay. You want to get family members in here too? Yeah. Yeah? Come on up.
Do you want to do that as a background now?
Yeah, you want the council in the background?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's turn it around.
Should probably stand up.
I'm gonna stand back here.
You're so tall, you just show up.
Let's give him a big round of applause. All right, moving along on the agenda, we have, grab my glasses. Moving on to the consent calendar, we have 5 items, items A through E. Could we have Deputy City Clerk read the consent items by title?
Thank you. Consent item A is consideration of resolution 23-42 approving certain demands. It's recommended that the City Council approve resolution 2342 approving payment of city warrants. Consent item B, cancellation of the July 25th, 2023 and August 8th, 2023 regular City Council meetings. It is recommended that the City Council approve the cancellation of the regular City Council meetings scheduled for July 25th, 2023 and August 8th, 2023, and direct staff to pay all necessary expenses during that time. Consent item C, notice of completion of water main lining project for fiscal year 2022 and 2023. It's recommended that the City Council approve the notice of completion of the water main lining project for fiscal year 22 and 23 and direct staff to file the notice of completion with the Los Angeles County Clerk's Office. Consent item D, consideration of resolution 23-48, approving the wireless communications use and access agreement between the Interagency Communications Interoperability System, JPA, and Verdugo Fire member cities for purposes of operating fire resource communications upon the IXCI system network. It's recommended that the City Council adopt resolution 2348, approving the Verdugo Fire Communications wireless communications use and access agreement, and authorize the city manager or designee to execute the wireless communication use and access agreement, and take such reasonable actions as may be required to implement the intent. Consent item E, consideration of resolution 2349, authorizing the city's participation in the Department of Health Care Services Public Provider Ground Emergency Medical Transport Intergovernmental Transfer Program. Mr. Mayor, that completes my report.
Thank you. Let's bring it back to council for any questions. Do we have any questions on item A? Item B? C? Item D? Item E? Okay. No questions. Are there any public comment cards for the consent calendar?
There are no public comment cards and no emails were received.
Thank you. All right. Do we have any comments on anything on the consent calendar before we have a motion? Please.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Carries unanimously. All right, that was easy. All right, we have 2 public hearings today. The first public hearing is our fiscal year 2023-2024 annual budget. I believe we have Director Hillary Guerrero-Leon.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. We have some slide presentation for the proposed budget. So staff began working on the budget in January and then met internally to discuss with departments each individual budget starting in around April. So in the proposed budget, we'll discuss the 3 major funds, and then at the end, we will discuss capital projects projected for the next fiscal year. So the 3 major funds, general, water, and sewer. The general fund is projected to have revenues of $16.2 million in the next fiscal year, and property taxes and UUT make up about 73% of the total general fund revenues. On the expenditure side, we have a total of expenditures, transfers out, and contingency of about $16.3 million, and included in this amount is an $100,000 contingency, as well as capital projects funded of 689,000. So overall, the general fund is projected to have a deficit of 79,750. And the deficit is due to an increase in operating costs and less available funding for capital. So our reserve policy allows to use reserves for one-time capital expenditures, not ongoing operating expenditures. The water fund is projected to have revenues of 7.2 million, and these projections were determined using the latest projections from the water rate study that is being conducted currently. The water fund is projected to have expenditures of 6.5 million, and included in that amount is 1.7 in infrastructure investment. The sewer fund is projected to have revenues of 1.2 million and about expenses of 1.2 million as well. In this amount, we have 100,000 in capital. And the revenue side is also projecting using the latest projections for the wastewater rate study. In this slide, we can see some list of capital projects that are projected to be funded for next fiscal year. Some are the annual street projects, water and wastewater improvements. We also have public safety master plans budgeted for next fiscal year. And in the 5-year CIP unfunded projects, we have about 14 million. And strategic goals will help prioritize funding for those projects. We also have the library project soon starting for the next fiscal year, and 10.3 million will be funded through grants, and about 450,000 would be the city portion. So looking ahead, we do have the user fee study citywide and wastewater and water rate study going on currently. And in a few couple months, we will come to council for approval on those fee studies. The city also is budgeting a public safety master plans, both for police and fire. And it's important to, these master plans will evaluate the current and future needs of the city and public safety services to support the community long-range goals. This evaluation and recommendations may have financial impacts, and funding options will need to be discussed further. Pension liabilities are also an item to keep monitoring year by year, and the city has been doing that recently. Council approved an additional prepayment to be around 85% funded. The recommendation today is the listed resolutions for budget adoption. And this concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director. Let's bring it back to the council with any questions. Councilmember Goss, please.
Well, first, I understand that you, Director, and other members of the staff have dedicated a lot of time this spring, and we had a lot of distractions, but so you guys put in a lot of extra hours implementing something that I think is near and dear to all of us, and that is zero-based budgeting. So we understand that that's tough for any organization to go through, and I wanted to say that up front. I really appreciate it. Representing the people, I think the public considers our government to be very serious because we go through those pains. Now, if I can make a substantive question, I see both property taxes and utility taxes are up. I expected the property tax. I didn't expect the utility tax to be up. Do we have any idea why that is? There may be something obvious I'm missing.
Yeah, they are trending higher, and part of it was also for the Edison bills that we've been seeing come through. We did
Edison bills, okay.
Yeah, we did increase it, but also being conservative that we don't know if it's going to be long-term or just a couple more months.
Right. Thank you. And on the expenditure side, I see that most areas either are down or about the same, but fire is up by 700,000, and police is up by about 850,000, thereabouts. What's driving that? Why are those costs so much higher?
We do have projected increases in personnel costs that we have taken into consideration.
It's primarily personnel costs, right?
I believe so, yeah.
Councilmember Goss, there's also, when you look at the budget, and you're correct, staff did an amazing job in looking at every expenditure, but specifically police and fire had some regulatory compliance fees that increased. So along with personnel costs, we did have some regulatory issues that had to be funded that weren't previously funded.
Okay, thank you. And I had one other question. I wanted to go back to the reserve issue for a minute, because it seems that the cities that you're listing for comparison on budgetary, on our reserves are all near us. They're low-risk cities, except for Monrovia. And low risk is what, 50% or higher, right?
Correct.
So I'm kind of wondering why we have a 25% threshold. I guess I'm speaking this kind of more rhetorically. It seems to me that that's kind of misleading if we're not really serious about dropping our budget levels below maybe 50%. So I mean, that's a conversation we could have at another time, but I would personally like to see our reserve levels increased as a consequence of seeing those comparisons.
Clarifying question, are you saying that our floor reserve level increased from 25 to 50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was that way when I came on the council. We dropped it for a while because we were told that that's where everyone else was at. But I'm seeing that no one's really, Monrovia is there, but everyone else is not taking that seriously. So I'm just wondering why we're doing it. That's a question we can talk about, I guess. And I guess I have one other question. No, actually, I have a couple comments I'll save till later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
So I had a question. So we had a wet year this last year. So is the 23-24 proposed revenue for water funds based on our typical year? And is the 22-23 based on the wet year? Is it how much lower is it than it was for 21-22? Do you know?
So in our discussions with our consultant for the rate study, we did see a wet year this year, but we didn't use that assumption for next year. We went back to the assumptions of our usual water usage.
So the 23-24 is kind of an average year, and so is it safe to say that it was about 10% down compared to an average year because of the wet year?
Yes, correct.
Okay, very interesting. Okay.
Member Parkhurst, if I may add, when we look at our water rates, there's multiple components. We have the infrastructure charge, we have the commodity, and we have the service charge. So when we talk about a reduction in water use because of the wet year, that's just one component. And so that's why you see that we're still projecting an increase, because there's the other two components that we know are fixed components to the water budget.
Got it. And just as long as we're on water, just a quick question. So what's our water, we have a water year. Aren't we starting a new water year? Do we start, or does it start in October? I'm trying to remember.
Correct. The rain year starts, I believe it's October 1st.
And is that how we do our planning in the water department?
We start measuring our rain year. We start importing water. Our groundwater recharge program starts on July 1st fiscally,
okay.
But we track the water year always starts on October 1st.
Got it. Okay.
As far as tracking how much rainfall we get, precipitation.
Okay. I'll get back on track. I'm sorry. On the capital projects, you have that there's $14 million over a 5-year period of unfunded capital improvement projects. is the library, is the 10 million on the library included in that, or is that not included because it's a funded project?
Yes, correct. It is not included because it's already funded through a grant.
Okay. And in the, is it correct that in the 5-year plan, you've got all of those capital improvements put out there, so the improvements to the PD building or the future PD building is included in that 14 million, right?
Correct, it is included.
And this is larger than normal capital improvement because of things like the library, well, not the library in this case, but the police department, is that right?
Yes.
Great, okay. That's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Parker.
Can I tag on to that question?
Please.
I noticed that it mentions that you are doing your projected water revenues from the current water and waste rate study being conducted. We haven't seen that yet, right?
No.
So why are we using that as opposed to the existing water rates?
We could have done either way, but we wanted to show the need for the capital infrastructure and the operating expenditures that are budgeted, and that's why we decided to use the projections from the revenue.
So would it be fair to say that we're trying to anticipate with the ideas of what we're anticipating with the new rate study?
Yes.
Okay. So that would help explain the projection of 77 million. Okay.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, yeah.
Yeah, can I follow up on that? Because that was my question as well. And then procedurally, when the rate study is final and, and we pass on that, when we discuss that at a future meeting, what will then be the process to, will we have an amended budget, or what would be the process to then incorporate the actual rate study versus the projections that you've used for this?
Yes, it would be through a mid-year adjustment. By the time we pass the rates and we can see better projections, it would be coming in through mid-year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions?
That was my question.
A couple questions, Director. Looking at our water fund and the infrastructure, I know we we amended the budget for, I think, an additional $1 million, I think, last cycle. This cycle, we're down about $1 million from what we spent last year. Can you explain what that's due to? And maybe the second question is, do we still have any funds left on our zero interest loan from the water district for capital?
So the funds for the zero interest loan would be exhausted in 22-23, and that's why we had that increase in expenditures for capital. For 23-24, we're projecting the 1.7 in infrastructure, and that's from our best projections.
And are we looking to have this, probably not a question for you, but still thinking about the budget and what we're planning for the city, are we going to have a similar water main replacement as far as feet or mileage, or however we want to calculate it, that we've had in previous years? I know this year was a little different because we were kind of hitting some troubled spots, but are we looking to do a similar year outside of this year, like a contiguous line?
Mayor, so our goal is to replace 1 mile of pipe per year. We have the water system master plan that I believe was completed in 2017. We're actually due for a new water system master plan that's going to identify the future capital water main line replacements. It's important to note that when we started this process, we were at over 30% water loss, and because of the efforts and the pipes that we've replaced, I think this year we'll be in single digits. So the cost of replacing a mile of pipe with 6-inch water main was typically about $1 million. That cost has gone up to about $1.2 to $1.4 million. So in our water rate study that we're conducting now, we're looking to continue replacing 1 mile of pipe and making the adjustments so that we can have that type of revenue to continue that program.
You anticipated my next question. So thinking about the capital and infrastructure, as I came on and a few other here at the dais, we were talking about things being red and orange, and the red getting the worst infrastructure for the water getting replaced, the orange getting replaced after that, but the orange turns red Do you have any idea of, are we finally catching up, or are we still kind of in a catch-up phase on the infrastructure portion of the water budget?
Mayor, I feel like we're out of the red, and we're dealing with orange and yellow. We were averaging somewhere between 4 and 450 leaks per year. When I spoke to our water superintendent last week, he informed me that we were about 80 leaks less than that. So we are finally starting to see the fruits of our labor out in the field and a reduction in water leaks.
That's great news, thank you. And finally, within water, as far as the infrastructure charge is concerned, are we budgeting to expend what we're expected to bring in revenue? Because I didn't see the line items for the infrastructure charge portion. Is that what we're anticipating receiving from our residents from their bills from the infrastructure charge? The 1.7 million or whatever that was?
Yes, it's close enough. And then the change in available resources that we see of 600,000 projected, that will build up like reserves for the years that we're gonna need it for the next 5 years, because it's similar, like looking out the 5-year projections for the water department. And an index is used for increasing costs as well when projecting that out.
Okay, thank you. And moving on, I think this probably is my final question. I know we're looking at the budget, we're looking at revenues, and we're looking at expenses. We're not looking at reserves specifically. But as we've seen from your diligent work and our city treasurer, moving away from LAIF funds and doing a little more U.S. Treasury laddered bonds, when the interest income comes in, it's my understanding most of that money are sequestered funds for within reserves for either our general fund or other funds. When those interest payments come in, are they? I probably know their answer, but I want to just get it out here. Are they considered revenue for our general fund, or are they stuck within the fund balance and then they become part of the reserve?
So any interest earned is allocated throughout all funds, because all funds have different cash balance within them: water fund, sewer fund, grant funds. So we have to allocate it based on their cash to those funds. For example, like the grant, library grant, if we have the funds and there's interest earned, it would get a portion of their interest earned.
Thank you. And that was a kind of a rambly question. I think my question directly is, when the interest income comes in, is it become reserve money, or are we able to use it within our revenue side when we do our budget?
So any interest earned will be booked a fiscal year received. So we could use it in the budget.
That's the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask
Okay.
a follow-up? So we're taking money out of our reserves. So we're not replacing any of that in the reserves in this budget, right? I mean, it wouldn't make any sense to be putting anything in reserves if you're going to take things out of reserves, right? So this year we're drawing on our reserves. So how big is our reserve?
So we're projected to be about 9.9 million in 23-24.
And clarification, Councilman Parker, so you're talking about general fund reserve specifically?
Yes, I was thinking general fund reserve.
Okay.
So we are putting stuff in reserves because we're going for a 50% reserve that we've got, right? Or am I confusing things? I just want to make sure I'm trying to think through. We're running a deficit this year, but we've got a 50% reserve. So we're both drawing on historic funds and we're trying to keep a reserve, so we've got a reserve balance. Is that right?
So for next fiscal year, we're drawing down on reserves. We're not replenishing reserves.
Right. But we will still have it maintained, to Councilmember Goss's point earlier, we will still have a 50% reserve, right?
Yes, correct. We will have that amount.
The last 2 years, we have drawn on reserves. So this fiscal year and the last fiscal year, we drew on reserves. Prior to that, we had a surplus. Do we contribute to the reserve so that we've got some additional buffer for years like this year? Have we done that in the past, say, 4 years?
Yes, usually if we are hitting reserves at a lower amount, we want to think of a way to replenish it across multiple years.
Okay, great. That's helpful. Thank you.
And to clarify, that's done via a surplus.
Via a surplus,
Yes.
correct.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question kind of following up with that? When we were comparing them with the other cities, is Sierra Madre and do all the other cities also work on a zero budget, net zero budget, or do they fall into a deficit normally?
I think, well, usually some other cities might start with the base and then just increase the budget overall by a certain percentage. We have started been doing it zero-based budget and taking that time to review it with departments internally. I'm not sure on what the process is for each individual city listed, but I know that sometimes they use a certain percentage increase and they don't review detail by detail.
And that number again for having the low reserve level is what percentage?
A low level, I don't have it in front of me, but I know that a moderate risk is about 25%, the 25%.
Okay. There was a chart previously that was amazing that you presented one time, and I loved it, and it made it understandable.
Any other questions for the director while we have her? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go too far. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'd like to open the public hearing. Do we have any comment cards?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have one speaker card. The first speaker is David Gordon.
David Gordon, Fairview Avenue. I'm sorry, but this budget is a catastrophe. And there are two catastrophes. One is there are huge strategic problems that are outlined if you look at the figures. And the second catastrophe is that there's no reference to this in the narrative or in the presentation. There's $43 million of capital projects very nicely listed in a very good chart. Of those, 13 million are unfunded. Where does that come from? Nearly all of it comes from money that's needed to convert the new headquarters of the police, something like 11.6 million. You add that to the 3.5 million you've spent on building and buying the building, you've got $15 million for the new police headquarters, which will have to be depreciated over, say, 20 years, which means you're adding $750,000 a year to your operating costs. Now, those operating costs for police have in any case been going up hugely. The adopted budget for last year for police was 3.8 million. This budget is 4.8 million, an increase, as Mr. Goss pointed out, of 26%. Fire, up 24%. Overall, however, the increase in expenditure is only 8%. So how come? Well, because you're economizing elsewhere. Where? Library, community services, elected and appointed, and administration. Administration is going to come down by nearly $500,000. You are under-administered anyway. It's a city hall that's only open 4 days a week. If you want to see the architect is in for 2 hours on a Tuesday morning. We're not spending enough on basic services. So I'm saying that this budget, which is meant to be a plan, is not a plan at all. You really have to go back to the drawing board. You may have done line by line basic budgeting for all kinds of small things, but when it comes to the big issues, we're facing a huge increase in public safety costs. And we all know why. We have decided we want our own police force and our own fire department. There's a shortage of personnel there, And anyway, they're represented by hugely powerful unions. Costs are going to go up faster than inflation and faster than our revenue year after year. Where's the money going to come from? We either have to have a new form of revenue, a parcel tax or something like that, and or we have to start addressing the strategic issue. Do we need to be spending so much money on public safety in one of the safest towns in California? And consider alternatives. Why are we spending 15 million on a new police headquarters? Is it really necessary? Maybe a mistake was made. Maybe we should sell the building and sell it now, because real estate, commercial real estate, is on a dive. So what I'm saying is, yeah, I know, but kind of I know what I'm talking about, and you are facing a crisis, and one of the crises is you're not being told what the crisis is.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Mr. Mayor, there's no more speaker cards and there were no emails received.
All right, any more speakers before we close the public hearing? All right, to close comment and public hearing and bring it back to council for comments. Who'd like to get started?
So I'll take a first stab at it. I do appreciate Mr. Gordon's comments. I'd like to follow up on them in a minute. I do appreciate that we do have a 5-year forecast in this budget. I appreciate that we are thinking forward and we are looking at the cost as we go forward. I also saw that we've got money budgeted in for Lizzie's Trailside Inn and the Richardson House, which is something we've heard a lot about, and I'm glad that we've got that in there. I'd be interested to get Director Guerrero-Leon's comment or the city manager's on the decrease in costs around administration, library, and community services, and kind of the thoughts there, what the changes are to address that. I also, I hear Mr. Gordon on the costs of public safety. We've heard loud and clear from the community that we want to have our own public safety, and I support that. It is something I think we're going to have to continue to look at, and we're going to have to look at what's it take to have a well-functioning, supported public safety organization. And if you just go to the firehouse or the police station, you can see the state that they are in. They are dealing with something that was designed, I don't know, 20, you'd know better than I do, 20 or 30 years ago that don't meet current function. And I think we're going to have to be thinking about that going forward. If it is one of the big questions is how we fund public safety. What do we need to do to have continue to have a first-in-class public safety program?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think this is not a new issue. I mean, I came onto council understanding that the priorities of the citizenry don't always, in fact, probably have not for a while, matched up with the revenue sources, in the city. And as Councilmember Parker said, we have heard on many occasions the public's strong support for maintaining our own fire and police departments. And yet we also have, most of our city that also wants to support all of the various other fiscal expenditures, of our city, community service, library, all of these things are important. I think we need to have sort of a reckoning as a city as to prioritization, because either these services need additional funding to be sustainable, or, as you've seen, we've had to, take here to give there. That's what a budget is. And so we've, as a city, I think we've reached a point where that balancing is becoming more tenuous. And I agree with Mr. Gordon, I agree with Councilmember Parkhurst that it's not sustainable. And so there's going to have to be a conversation to be had with the public as to whether, I'm not an accountant, but I know there's two sides of the ledger. There's more revenue or less expense, and that's the conversation that needs to be had. Do we want to have less expense? And if that's the case, what are our priorities? Or do we want to maintain all of the various things that make the city so great? Then this side has to be adjusted upward. So I really do think that this budget, and I appreciate all of the work that the staff has put into it. It's a huge undertaking, but it's you know, it's a good example of really what we need to be thinking about as a city. And, you know, there's lots of other things going on in the city as well, but honestly, this has to be one of our highest priorities.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
I was gonna kind of follow up on the same exact, idea, and just to answer kind of your questions, when we moved over from the original station, which is on the boulevard at about 71 maybe, West Sierra Madre Boulevard, it was because we had increased needs, equipment changes, engines are much larger than they were before, and we had a more full-service fire department, so police and fire moved over next door to 232 West Sierra Madre Boulevard, and now the need is that building was made for firefighters to come from their homes. It wasn't made for them to live there. So they have not had any upgrades. They have the same tables, the same equipment, the same kitchen they've had since it was a non-living equity. Now people have to live there for up to 48 plus hours a week, and it's their home away from home. They spend more hours there than they do at home. And those upgrades need to happen, and same with the police department. And I actually am very excited about that transition, because we heard from our citizens on what they wanted and whether we wanted to keep our own fire department, police department, water department. We're a full service city, and we've heard that that's what our citizens want. And so now it is our job to try to figure that out. And I think you guys, this one budget that you presented is pretty fantastic on where you guys have been able to save, and really the whole city has pitched in to do that, to be able to give us the services we have. We are going to have to look at in the future, of course, where we're going to find revenue, and we have some, new projects that are always in the realm that it's going to be pretty exciting, I think, and helpful. But we do have to look at those hard questions and ask people what they want and what our city wants, not what we want. So I appreciate that when people express what they want, we're listening to them, and it's reflected in the budget. And it's timed out, like you said, so that it's not all at once. We look in the future. And it is hard, and I appreciate all the rest of the city departments have done to put this together.
Thank you. Councilmember Goss, do you have any comments?
Yeah, to the new police building, to me, that is the linchpin of our future. I think we have increased costs, operational costs, in police and fire that we're anticipating that we do not have the revenues to cover in the next few years. So I think that Mr. Gordon's talk about a possible public safety taxes, I think it's about time we started talking about that. I do not think, though, that is going to cover the cost of this police building. My impression is that when we went into the purchase of that building last year, we were under the impression it was going to cost significantly less to upgrade it than what we now believe it's going to cost. So I think we ought to talk about that as a separate issue, not a budgetary issue, but as a public safety issue. How can we retain the use of that building and maybe not have to finance all those improvements? And there are ways to do that. We could consider selling it to a company that specializes in leasing to public agencies, and I think if we did that, we'd probably save operating costs, and we wouldn't have to spend the $10 million. Hopefully that will get into the conversation. I don't know if that's something we want to talk about tonight, but there are options out there for us if we don't want to continue with the $10 million or plus dollars to upgrade that public safety building. I've been on the council long enough to know that what we have accomplished in the last few years in terms of the budget you're looking at is simply a reflection of staff's diligence. They have been robbing Peter to pay Paul, because I haven't heard from my constituents, I don't think anyone else has, that our services have diminished one bit. As a matter of fact, I think our services are probably at an all-time high. So I think that speaks very, very highly of our staff. But they can only do so much. I mean, you can only go to the turnip so many times, and there's only so much blood in it. So I think part of the conversation is how do we fund our services properly, at the same time develop our staff and give them the kind of support that they, in many cases, have not had for some time because of fiscal realities. And I'm not sure what that means. I don't think we're really going to do that tonight. I essentially support the outline of this budget. Mr. Gordon knows that I agree with him on his main thrust of this, that we have to have a strategic vision. We have gone through the process of trying to develop a strategic vision. We spent a considerable amount of time in the last year trying to do outreach to our public, and I think we did pretty good on that. But that is inconclusive. It's not like the public shows up to these meetings at the library and out of Public Works and they give us a laundry list of things that we're doing right and wrong. So I think it's our job as a council, as leaders in the city, to try to make sense of that. So for me, this is a starting point. I'm open to any kinds of discussions. If you want to talk about playing around with some of these numbers, that's fine. But I do believe that we need to have larger conversations about public safety, about the public safety building, about a possible public safety tax in the near future.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss. Yeah, I think we're kind of like mind here, and I think Mr. Gordon brings up important points. And kind of, there's nuance here, right? Not a lot of people understand corporate finance, and probably less people understand municipal finance. When you have an asset, you don't pay for them out of your annual revenue, right? An asset, the financing of the asset's generally lined up with the life of the asset. So that talks about bonds or borrowing or things of that nature, whatever that looks like. So I think when we think about the public safety building, we own it. We haven't dropped too much into it yet. We're going to have to, I think, step back and take a good hard look at what the community wants and needs are. But I feel as though, talking with my constituents, that there is an appetite to kind of go forward with whatever it takes to have autonomy and have a say in having our own fire and police. You're able to talk directly to the city manager. The city manager can direct our directors of those public safety departments, whereas you don't get that luxury when you have sheriff and LA County Fire. So as long as our constituents are still on board with that plan, we're up here to represent the majority voice. So yes, I think we do need to step back, take a look at financing options and or tax issues. As we're thinking of the revenue, and I did have another question, Director, we haven't really talked about, and this goes to more budget than capital improvements, which are more like balance sheet items. Have we done a study, and have we seen on the revenue side what percentage of our housing stock is still in Prop 13? Has there been an acceleration of properties coming out of Prop 13? And are we basing our budget on increases in revenues due to the reassessments of properties in town?
So our HDL consultants help us budget for the property tax, and then I can provide a better answer to that question in the next.
Yeah, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I mean this is obviously something that as you consider, I'm an economist, and we consider things like mortality and morbidity and those types of issues. As people get older, they die. As people get older, they get more infirmed. And a lot of those homes are held by people that are within Prop 13. And it's the cruel fact of the dismal science. So I think that's something that we should look at and have consideration and with our revenue side, but that doesn't really solve the problem of the building. If we're going to be aligning financing with the life of an asset, that's different. But we do have some increased costs on the pike, right? So as we're looking at employment cost indices or increases within wages, they don't line up with increases in energy prices, nor do they line up with housing prices. They generally move in the same direction. Well, housing does, but usually not the same magnitude. So we have to make sure that we're giving our residents what they want and what they need as far as safety. And as far as I'm concerned, safety is number one. That includes police, fire, includes water, all those things to make sure that we continue to be a safe community for our residents.
Can I ask you another question to follow up about property tax? Do you know what percentage the city of Sierra Madre receives of a resident's property tax?
So of every dollar, it's about 21 cents.
1%. Any other comments before,
I do have a comment. I mean, I think we're all realistic here and pragmatic, and we understand kind of the reality that we face, but I just want to sort of lighten the gloom and doom a little bit. I mean, sort of hearkening back to the discussion we had earlier about the water pipes. I mean, we, as a city, not just in the water department, but sort of fiscally, have been in the red, really, that red danger zone and playing catch up for so long. So I just want to highlight that we're actually having this conversation somewhat of a luxury of figuring out what our long-term plan is and the kinds of investments and improvements we can make to our city's assets that has been basically ignored for decades. And so I just want to highlight that we're now at a position where we're not constantly just facing emergency after emergency after emergency and just trying to hold it all together. We're now actually in a position to think about long-term strategic goals and actually making the improvements and upgrades and new ideas for improving the city. So I do like the idea that we're sort of in the yellow and orange, not just in water, but sort of across our assets.
Good point.
thank you, that's a very important aspect and point to what's been done here with staff over the past few years. Because there was a time, it looked like we were just held together with scotch tape and Band-Aids, and that's not, now we do have the luxury of, we bought a building, can we finance it, can we improve it? So I think we're in a much better spot than we were, let's say, a decade ago. Yeah, great point, thank you. Any other comments before we look to a motion? How are we feeling on this budget?
I'm ready to move to adopt the 2023-2024 budget.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other comments before we?
I just want to try to get into the record my desire to have a discussion about the financing of that public safety building, and I would like to have a discussion of a public safety tax.
Okay.
As a consequence of this budget meeting.
Councilmember Goss, would you like to amend the motion to include that?
I don't know if that's necessary. I just wanted to get it on the record.
No, I think, yeah, strengthens the record, and we can talk with staff about that. So you're good with the motion, and okay. Any other comments before we go to a vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. We have a budget. Okay, thank you. Now on to the second public hearing.
Mayor, did we adopt each of these items? Because I think we just said the budget, which is the first, you could call part A of the first item. There are separate resolutions.
Yeah, we all dropped the ball there. No, you're right. There's a laundry list. There's three resolutions.
Got too excited.
And yeah.
I think there's 4 actually.
4 resolutions.
All right,
So we essentially adopted 23-43.
Correct.
Yes, thank you. That's why we have a city attorney, right?
I move to adopt Resolution 2344, approving the GAN appropriations limit for fiscal year 23-24. Resolution 2345, approving the 23-24 fee schedule, and PFA Resolution 77 for the Public Financing Authority for the City of Sierra Madre adopting the budget for fiscal year 23-24 and appropriating the amounts budgeted. And yes, there. Now I think I got the last 3 things.
You did.
I'll second.
Any other comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Not only do we have a budget, now we have finished. Now we have fee schedules and everything else. Okay. Thank you, Mr. City Attorney, for that clarification.
Keeping us out of trouble. Thank you.
Okay, we have our second public hearing. We're going to be talking about the assessment of the downtown landscaping and lighting maintenance district. And I think we have, Analyst Norwood. Yes.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight is the final step in a three-part process. The City Council is asked to open the public hearing, take public input, and discuss and close the public hearing. It is recommended that the City Council should adopt Resolution 23-38, confirming the assessment of the Downtown Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance Assessment District and ordering the levy for fiscal year 23-24. On May 23rd, 2023, the City Council adopted Resolution of Intent to Levy and Confirm the Report for the Downtown Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance. The improvements include lighting, landscaping, and associated maintenance within the city's downtown business district. Tonight's adoption of the resolution by the City Council will authorize staff to initiate the proceedings with the Los Angeles County Assessor's Office to set these assessments on fiscal year 23-24 property tax rolls. It is recommended that the City Council open the public hearing, receive testimony, and adopt Resolution 23-38, Resolution of the City Council of the City of Sierra Madre confirming the assessment of the Downtown Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance Assessment District and ordering the levy for fiscal year 23-24. I'm happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability.
Thank you, Analyst Norwood. I think we've been dealing with this for a while. Please, Mayor Pro Tem.
I asked this question last time, and so this is mainly just a confirmation and also just to put it out again because it's not entirely clear in this part of the step, because you're right, we've done this similar act in stages, but I just wanted to clarify that the levy that is recommended by the study and that would be approved by this resolution is essentially no change from the prior level of tax in the prior year, and that also that now having phased in over a number of years the amount of the tax that's being assessed, we're at 100%. That's correct?
I do believe so. Director Semino is not here. He helped me on this, but I do think that is the case.
Yeah, that was his response when I asked at the last meeting. I just, again, wanted to sort of make sure that we're saying that at every meeting so people understand what we're actually assessing at this point.
Thank you. Any other questions for Analyst Norwood? No? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to open the public hearing. Do we have any comment cards?
No comment cards were received, and there were no emails received as well.
Okay, last chance, public hearing. All right, let's close it and bring it back to council for comments, if we have any. No comments? Okay, there is only one resolution here. Do we have a motion?
I move to adopt Resolution 2338, confirming the assessment of the Downtown Landscaping and Lighting Maintenance Assessment District for fiscal year 23-24.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Goss. All those in favor? Aye. Carries unanimously. Thank you. All right, so now we're moving right along. Get the agenda back somewhere in the stack of papers. Thank you. Discussion item. It's the consideration of the 13th tolling agreement, professional services agreement, and addendum and lot tie covenant for the development of the Stonehouse properties. I believe we have a presentation from City Attorney Garagosian.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll begin the conversation by saying that, as you probably know, in the city there are 3 large undeveloped sites. There's the Meadows, there's what's referred to as Stone Gate, which is also 1 Carter, and there's Stone House. The Meadows is subject to a specific plan. Stone House and Stone Gate are subject to settlement agreements. So today we're only going to be talking about Stone House. I believe it's the smaller of the 3 potential developable sites. So for discussion today are 4 different agreements. The first is the 13th tolling agreement with Ginkgo Stonehouse LLC. I'll talk about what each of these are in greater detail. The second is a covenant and agreement to hold property as 1 parcel with Ginkgo Stonehouse LLC. The third is a professional services agreement for consultant services with Vandermost Consulting Services, Inc. And the fourth is an addendum to the professional services agreement for consultant services with Vandermost Consulting Services, Inc. and Ginkgo Stonehouse LLC. So first, the tolling agreement. And to understand the tolling agreement, I think you need a little bit of background on the litigation. So in March 2010, the city entered into a settlement agreement with CS1 Carter LLC, which was at that time the entity that owned Stonegate and 1 Carter, and CS Stonehouse LLC, which is the predecessor to Ginkgo Stonehouse LLC. So after 2010, the party that entered into the settlement agreement with us, CS Stonehouse LLC, sold its interests in the property to 2 different entities, Ginkgo Stonehouse LLC, I'll call it Stonehouse 1, and Ginkgo Stonehouse 2 LLC, I'll call that Stonehouse 2. Now in December 2012, Stonehouse 1 and Stonehouse 2 entered into an MOU whereby Stonehouse 1 would be the party charged with submitting all applications on behalf of both parties with respect to development of those parcels. And so for that reason, the city has been entering into tolling agreements only with Stonehouse 1. The last tolling agreement we entered into was the 12th tolling agreement, which was executed in June of 2021, and that's set to expire at the end of this month. And so the reason we need to enter, the city council is going to consider entering into the 13th tolling agreement, is to extend the life of that 2010 settlement agreement. Because if that settlement agreement is not extended, then litigation over the Stonehouse site will resume. Now turning to the second agreement I talked about, which I referred to as the covenant and agreement to hold property as one parcel. This is really a lot tie. And what we're trying to do, and I'm going to use the laser pointer, what we're trying to do is, if this is the entire site, there's a parcel 3 here and a parcel 4. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that the developer doesn't sell these 2 parcels independently of each other. Because once the EIR process begins, and once we begin the process of entitlements, for administrative convenience and to make sure that there's no confusion in this, with respect to the settlement agreement terms, we want to make sure that those properties are held together. So if they're sold together. But they can't be sold separately. And as you can see here on the left-hand side, that's just a blown-up version. That's an enlarged version of this image here on the right-hand side. And you can see, per the settlement agreement's terms, 9 separate parcels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And the 9 parcels are what's contemplated under the settlement agreement's terms. Now the third agreement is a professional services agreement that the city is entering into. City staff has chosen VCS Environmental Inc. to prepare an environmental impact report with respect to development of that Stonehouse site. And the fourth agreement is the addendum to the professional services agreement, so the addendum to the third agreement. And so an addendum we thought was necessary in this case. Normally, the city incurs the expense of the consultant, in this case VCS, and recovers that expense from the developer/applicant. But here, staff prefers an alternative approach. So one option is to have the developer pay into some kind of holding account, and we draw down on that holding account. But I think the most administratively convenient method is to make the developer applicant directly liable for all expenses incurred by the consultant. So to clarify, the consultant reports directly to the city because the consultant is hired by the city. However, the addendum is going to make the consultant pay for whatever cost, so it's going to make the developer pay for whatever costs are incurred by the consultant. So the consultant still reports to the city, and the city makes sure that the developer is going to pay those costs, and the consultant can try to track down the developer if costs aren't paid. And this just protects the city because then the city isn't on the hook if for whatever reason the property is sold and we can't find who the buyer is, or the developer isn't able to reimburse us for the expenses that we normally incur in taking on an expensive EIR. And just, again, a note here, the EIR is expected to cost $281,000. So those are the 4 agreements under consideration today. Happy to take any questions from the City Council.
Thank you, City Attorney Garagosian. Do we have any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
So if we don't approve this, we go back to settlement, or we go back to litigation, what would we be litigating? What is it? Yeah, what is the other option? What happens in the litigation?
So if the 13th tolling agreement isn't approved, that's the only thing that would trigger litigation. And if the parties go back to litigation, then they're going to litigate, I believe at the time, and I want to make sure I get this right, because there's 3 separate litigations involving Stonehouse and Stonegate. But the 2010 one resolved the adoption of the Hillside ordinance. And so there was an issue regarding whether or not those zoning standards apply to these Stonehouse parcels. And so we'd be litigating that point all over again.
And so, I mean, these are just up off of Grandview, and they're, what, slope category 1, right?
Correct.
So they wouldn't necessarily qualify as Hillside ordinance, is that right?
Well, there was a Hillside ordinance that was adopted at that time and has been amended since. So what they're litigating is going to be the Hillside ordinance adopted as of whatever was in effect in 2010.
Okay, got it. And so and for the litigation that we had in the past, is there an idea of the ballpark of what the city has already spent in litigation on this? Any range or anything? I know it's been a long time, it's 13 years, so.
Yeah, I don't know the amount for involving the 2010 litigation, but I do know that I believe it was the 2008 or 2014 litigation, and that resolved the Stonegate issue. That cost approximately $500,000.
$500,000.
Over the course of 2 years, I think.
Okay. So we could be back into if we didn't approve this, we'd be back in the case of hundreds of thousands of dollars of litigation, potentially. I mean, it's hard to say, because we don't know what would be litigated, but we've got a benchmark on it.
Right.
Okay. Those are all my questions.
Can I put a finer point on that? I mean, the failure to approve the extension of the tolling agreement doesn't necessarily result in litigation, because if the entitlement process continues with the developer, they're getting sort of what the benefit they have under the agreement. The way I look at it, the benefit of extending the settlement agreement inures to the city, because it prevents the developer from reopening litigation for some particular reason. You know, maybe they're not happy with some aspect of the entitlement process. So, I mean, theoretically, the parties could continue on the development path that we're on without necessarily extending the settlement agreement. But it's not clear to me why that would be of benefit to us, because right now we're protected from, any further litigation, and we have a, agreed, court-approved set of standards under which the development is going to proceed. So to me, I think there doesn't strike me as a lot of benefit to not extend the settlement agreement. Is that the right way to think of it?
I think that's right. The developer, through the tolling agreement, preserved their legal arguments as of the time they settled. So whatever their legal arguments were in 2010 regarding the Hillside ordinance that existed in 2010, they've been able to preserve those arguments over the course of these 13 plus years. And so if we go back into litigation, we're basically going to be litigating a Hillside ordinance that no longer exists in the books. and they're going to have all the arguments available to them that I think we've since addressed.
So, my question then would be, if let's say we didn't continue and we didn't extend, could they sell those parcels separately?
Without the lot tie agreement, yes.
Okay.
And then, so just to be clear here, the lot tie agreement is good through the life of the entitlement of these projects. Once they're fully entitled, they're going to be divided up into 9 separate lots with homes on them, and they can be sold separately at that time.
And what is the acreage of the two? Put the map back up there, Oscar. Could you put oh, there. Thank you. Sorry. What is the acreage of this area?
I'm going to defer to the director on this one.
Collectively, the lots are 8.9 acres total.
Can you say that again?
Both lots, both parcels 3 and 4, collectively total 8.9 acres.
Thank you.
And that's for the proposed 9 lots.
That's correct.
2 parcels, 9 lots. Okay. Thank you. 9 acres. Okay. Yes. Any other questions?
No, right now. Not right now.
Councilmember Goss, you've seen this a lot through the years. Yeah, we've seen this agreement, even those of us who have been on almost 3 years now. But now it's a little different because there's movement going on. So my question is kind of going back to the settlement agreement. It's not within the agenda report, but it's my understanding, I want to make sure it's clear for the record, that part of the agreement was what and how they can build on that property. Is that true?
That is true. Design guidelines were established per the settlement agreement. And to date, those design guidelines are being implemented both for the stone house properties that will be developed, as well as for the stone gate properties, the 1 Carter properties that are currently being developed. And I believe a project is pending at the Planning Commission meeting for this next meeting. It's coming up.
So I think you kind of anticipated my next question, which was what we're seeing within the initial phase of what's being proposed there does fall within the scope of the settlement agreement that may have been in 2010 or 28 or 2014, whenever those designed and metrics were put together.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for staff? No? Okay, let's open this up to public comment. Do we have any public comment cards on this issue?
There were no public comment cards received, and there were no emails.
Thank you. Nothing, Alcorns? Okay. Let's bring it back to the council for comments.
I'll start, if you don't mind. I mean, I think my question actually veered a little bit into discussion, but I mean, to me, this tolling agreement provides us with the level of review of these projects that, barring that agreement, we would not have under the current standards in the process. I mean, the law has changed inexorably, since 2010, and so, I am heartily in favor of extending this as long as we need to get through the development of these projects, because it does actually afford us the types of review and scrutiny that we hear constantly from our residents that they would prefer we have, and many of us probably prefer we would have, but don't want to violate state law. So that's my opinion, and obviously I'm happy to not have litigation at any time. So those two things together seem that make this kind of a no-brainer to me.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're of like mind here. Stay out of litigation. There's agreement that had been put forth, and both parties look like we want to honor that agreement. So I'm in favor of approving these items as well. I think there are 4 items that we're talking about. The tolling agreement, the lot tie, the consulting agreement, and then the addendum to the professional services agreement as well. So before we go to a motion. Any questions on, because we're talking mainly about the settlement agreement. Any questions regarding the professional services contract, the addendum, or the lot tie? I think the presentation did a good job of explaining most things, but if we're good,
I move that we approve all 4 agreements.
is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Carries unanimously. Thank you. Okay, that brings us towards the end of our agenda, I think. Still haven't found my agenda.
That is the end of the agenda.
It is the end of the agenda. Okay, do we have any new items for council to consider? Any agenda items for next or coming up?
Earlier, I did ask that we have a discussion about 2 separate things. The possible need for a public safety tax and to look at options for financing the new police building.
Okay, anything else?
Oh,
Please.
I'd love to hear a readout maybe from either Community Services Director or the City Manager about the status of the playground equipment. I think that was in last year's budget.
Yes. Anything else? Going once, going twice? Is that enough direction, City Manager? Yes. Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned to our next regular meeting of June 27th. Thank you, everybody.